Chambers, your videographer, and I represent Atkinson Baker, Inc. in Glendale, California. I am not financially interested in this action, nor am I a relative or employee of any attorney or any of the parties. The date is August 11th, 2009. The time is 9:02 a.m. This deposition is taking place at Asbury and Sims, 100 Peabody Place, Suite 900, Memphis, Tennessee, 38103. This is case number 4:09-CV-008BSM, entitled Terry Hobbs versus Natalie Pastor, individually, and Natalie Pasdar, Emily Robinson, and Martha Siddell, doing business as Dixie Chicks. The opponent is Mr. Terry Hobbs. This deposition is being taken on behalf of the defendants. The court reporter is Ms. Jeanette Crouch from Blue City Reporting. Counsel, will you please introduce yourselves?
DeLeslie Davis and Dan Davison for defendant Natalie Pasdar.
Bob Wellenberger for the Dixie Chicks.
Kobe Island and Ted Thomas for the plaintiff Terry Hobbs.
Sir, would you raise your hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Hobbs, you remember that I'm DeLeslie Davis and I'm an attorney representing Natalie Pasdar in this case, correct?
Correct.
And you understand that this is just a continuation of the last day of the deposition that we took of you. You're still under oath, and the testimony you're giving is still just the same as if you were sitting in a courtroom.
Yes, ma'am.
And all the agreements we had and instructions about if you don't understand one of my questions, you'll let me know. If you need to take a break, you'll let me know. Those are still in effect. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Mr. Hobbs, you appeared on the Maury Povich show in August of 1994, correct?
I'm not sure of the date, but we did in Moore's show, yes.
Do you remember that it was in 1994, about a year after the murders?
Roughly so.
Let me show you what I've marked as deposition exhibit number 20, which is an article entitled Retrial Sought in 94 Slayings by Kathy Fry, May 31st of 2008. I think there was some discussion of this in your last deposition, but I just wanted to make sure that that's a true and correct copy of an article in which you gave some quotes. Does that sound right?
I'm not sure if I give quotes on this or not.
Let me clarify then. I think in your last deposition you mentioned that you had contacted Kathy Fry in an attempt to talk to her about getting the truth out there about the West Memphis Three. Does that sound familiar?
Out of Little Rock.
I'm sorry?
Miss Fry out of Little Rock?
Yes.
Remember that?
And I think if you look at Exhibit 20, you can see that this article was written by Kathy Fry.
Okay.
Does that sound familiar?
That looks familiar.
I believe you met with her around May of 2008 at a barbecue restaurant.
Here in Memphis.
In Memphis, correct? And I've read through that article, which is titled Retrial Sought, and I've read through some of the notations in your journal, and I think I understand what you were testifying to in your last deposition about the reasons that you went to the press on a number of occasions, and I want to make sure that I'm right about that, okay?
All righty.
When you say that you wanted to get the truth out, there was a lot of conversation through the years about the West Memphis Three deserving a new trial, correct?
There has been.
And for years there's been discussion about them getting the raw end of the deal in their trials, correct?
There has been.
And when you talked about wanting to get the truth out, one of the things you were trying to accomplish in talking to the press was to make it clear that you believed that the West Memphis police and the prosecutors had done a good job in investigating and prosecuting the true killers in the murders, correct?
Correct.
And that the West Memphis Three belonged in prison.
Correct.
And that there was no need for further investigation or further appeals of their convictions. The authorities had the right guys.
In my opinion, they do.
And you wanted the press and the public and people that were wondering about whether the West Memphis Three deserved a new trial to understand that that was your opinion on the matter, correct?
Correct.
And when you agreed to sell your life story to Dimension Films and to sit down with the Dimension Films filmmakers and talk about the murders and allow Dimension Films to use your life story and the life story of Stevie in a potential motion picture, you also were wanting to make sure that that truth that we just discussed got out to the public and to the authorities, correct?
Probably so.
And that if there was going to be a movie made about the West Memphis Three and whether they were wrongfully convicted, you certainly wanted your position on the matter to be clear, and that was that the authorities had tried and prosecuted the killers, correct?
Correct.
And that they should stay in jail and that there was no further need for investigation of anybody, correct?
Correct.
And later then, to the extent that anybody was concerned about whether you were involved in the murders and whether there needed to be any investigation of you, you wanted the truth out there that you were not involved in the murders, correct?
Correct.
And that there didn't need to be any investigation of you, correct?
Correct.
You have not done any research to determine what specific evidence the Damien Eccles defense team will present at a hearing on the habeas corpus filing, have you?
Probably not.
You haven't reviewed the filing that Damien Eccles made to try to get a new trial or get released, have you?
I don't keep up with it like that.
And I appreciate that, and just to make sure that we're clear, you haven't actually looked at the documents he filed with regard to habeas, have you?
No.
And you haven't kept up, as you say, with regard to what specific evidence he plans to present at the federal hearing?
Correct.
We had talked earlier about Deposition Exhibit number 8, and I've put in front of you all the deposition exhibits we had at your last deposition, so if for any reason you need to refer to any of those, please do. But Deposition Exhibit number 8 was the Dimension Films contract that you signed regarding your life story and Stevie's life story. Do you recall that contract?
We did do one with them.
And to clarify, I may have misspoken, that the Deposition Exhibit number 8 is not actually a signed copy of that contract.
Correct.
Do you have a signed copy of that contract?
Probably somewhere.
Just don't know where.
Right.
Is it your best recollection that the only thing wrong with Deposition Exhibit number 8, the unsigned contract, if you were to compare it to the actual signed contract, is that amount of payment? That's the only difference.
I'm not sure. I'd have to read them both, compare them.
Would you do that for me? Would you agree to go back and look for the signed version of that contract?
I'm not sure if I could even find it.
If Ross Sampson has a copy of the signed version of the Dimension Films contract, would it be okay with you if he produced it to us?
Sure.
A chronology is a description of events and when they occurred. Isn't that correct?
Okay.
Do you agree with that? I'm sorry, I spoke
I
over.
do. I do.
And based on your understanding, and I know you're not an expert in DNA and forensic testing, but you do have an understanding that those tests are expensive, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We've talked a lot about events that occurred in 2007. I want to pick a time frame, December 31st of 2006. I want to talk about the time frame just real briefly from the date of the murders, May 5th of 1993, to December 31st of 2006. Are you with me on that time frame?
I am.
During that time, no one ever accused you, no one in the press ever accused you of being involved in any way in the murders. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge.
And other than a few comments that we've discussed regarding Pam Hobbs' family, are there any other persons from the date of the murders to December 31st of 2006 that you know considered that it was possible that you were involved in the murders?
Not that I'm aware of.
When you met with the West Memphis 3 investigators and the criminal profiler, what did they tell you about who they were?
What did they tell me? Ron Lax, defense investigator for the West Memphis 3.
So he did tell you at least that he was affiliated with and working for the West Memphis 3.
Correct.
And did Rachel Geiser and John Douglas also tell you that they were affiliated with and working with and for the West Memphis 3?
I believe they do.
And you understood that Ron Lax and Rachel Geiser and John Douglas were working to help the West Memphis 3 either, it's kind of back to what we were talking about before, get a new trial or get out of prison, correct?
That's to my understanding.
And you understood that what they were doing in their attempts to either help the West Memphis 3 get a new trial or get out of prison was trying to gather evidence that would be favorable to the West Memphis 3.
I do.
And at no time did Ron Lax, Rachel Geiser, or John Douglas ever tell you that your communications with them were confidential, correct?
I had asked him if I am being recorded or videoed, and I was told no.
But they never told you that the discussions you were having with them were confidential and would not be disclosed to anyone, did they?
I don't believe they did.
And it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that one of the reasons you were also meeting with the West Memphis 3 investigators, Ron Lax, Rachel Geiser, John Douglas, was also part of this mission to get the truth out.
Object to the characterization of his mission to get the truth out.
In other words,
Hear all of that.
Object to the characterization of his mission to get the truth out.
in other words, you wanted the West Memphis 3 investigators to understand in the same way that you had wanted the public and the authorities to understand that you believed, and I'll just break it down, that the West Memphis police had done a good job in catching the killers, correct?
They did.
And you wanted the West Memphis 3 investigators to know that as well, correct?
Right.
And you wanted the West Memphis 3 investigators to know that you felt like the prosecutors had done a good job in getting an appropriate conviction of the killers when they convicted the West Memphis 3, correct?
Correct.
And that to the extent you could impart to those West Memphis 3 investigators that there was no need for further investigation, you wanted to do that, correct?
Well, I did, and there's also something else you're overlooking. I mentioned this before to someone, I wanted to go down and see what kind of people that are trying to get some killers out of prison.
And that's one of the reasons, quite frankly, that I'm following up on this line of question. I got your transcript back to the first day of the deposition. Did you have an opportunity to look at that?
No.
Okay. And in reading that, I saw that comment where you said you wondered what kind of people would try to get killers out of prison. And that's one of the reasons I'm following up.
The rules don't contemplate you going back through a transcript after 7 hours and then coming back in here and pounding them.
Well, I'm not trying to pound him.
What we need to do is move to new topics. What we don't need to do is go to the transcript and use extra time. You know, we want to get this thing done today.
I understand that, Mr. Thomas, and I'm trying to do that. But in follow-up to that, I'm trying to understand your testimony.
You've made 3 or 4 references to the previous transcript.
And let me just finish this line of questioning. And that is to say that in going down and meeting with the West Memphis 3 investigators to see what kind of people would want to get killers out of prison, you wanted to take that opportunity to inform the West Memphis 3 investigators that the right guys were in prison and there was no need for further investigation, correct?
At the time, yes. Little to no that I was under their investigation.
And I'll object to everything, but at the time, yes, as being non-responsive. Did you tell John Mark Byers about the DNA evidence when Ron Lax told you about your DNA evidence?
I'm not sure.
Do you have any recollection of calling Mr. Byers and informing him of that DNA evidence sometime in May or June of 2007?
I don't recollect that.
Is it possible that you did?
It could be. I'm not sure.
If Mr. Byers said that you called him and told him about the DNA evidence before he had heard about the Hobbs DNA evidence from any other source, would you agree that that's probably likely what you did?
Objection lack foundation. This calls for speculation.
You can answer.
I wouldn't believe anything John Mark Byers said.
Is it fair to say that you and John Mark Byers were friends for a time?
I tried to be.
What period of time was it that you and Mr. Byers actually had a good relationship?
I don't think we ever had a good relationship.
What was the time period that you were trying to be friends with Mr. Byers?
During and after the trials,
And how long after the trials?
well, we went our separate ways. And I would run across him or call him every once in a while.
Can you tell me a time period that your relationship with Mr. Byers went south?
Probably when I found out that he had been recording me, and not to my knowledge.
And when was that?
I'm not sure,
Is it 2007, 2008?
roughly.
Can you narrow it down to one of those years?
Not really.
Yep. Mr. Hobbs, I'm going to have to go into some material now that may be sensitive. And I want you to know that I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable or embarrass you. It's just the nature of this case in which certain sensitive events occurred in 1993, and also the fact that you've placed your reputation in issue by bringing this lawsuit. So please understand as I ask you some of these questions that I'm not trying to upset you. Let me show you what's been marked as Deposition Exhibit number 21. And that is an affidavit prepared by Sharon Nelson, who is a former girlfriend of yours, I believe, according to your past testimony. You have seen this document before, correct?
We did this last time.
Well, you mentioned overall that you thought it was a bunch of garbage last time, but is this the document, Deposition Exhibit number 21, is the document you were referring to as a bunch of garbage?
Part of it is, yes, ma'am.
What is the other bunch of garbage that you're referring to with regard to Ms. Nelson?
The part that she said that I found the boys first, and anything she said about that is a lie.
Let me just read this real quickly then. In paragraph 5, I recall a few times that Terry did talk about Stevie when Terry and I were alone together. Terry told me he discovered the bodies of the boys the night they were killed. He said that the bodies were buried underwater. Terry told me that they were dead when he found the bodies. Terry said that he saw some bites and there were some cut-like marks. He told me those bodies were nothing I would ever want to see when I'd asked what they looked like when he found them. Terry told me he found the bodies before he picked up Pam, his ex-wife, from her job that night. Terry said he waited to tell her and the police until it was time for Pam to get off work. Are those statements by Ms. Nelson true?
No, ma'am.
Specifically, did you find the bodies of the 3 little boys prior to picking Pam up from work?
No, I did not.
Did you ever tell Sharon Nelson that you found the bodies of the boys prior to picking them up from work?
Not one time.
Do you have any explanation for, well, let me back up. Are you saying that Sharon Nelson is lying in her affidavit?
Exactly.
Do you have any explanation for why Sharon Nelson would lie about something that serious in her affidavit?
Her 15 minutes of fame.
Any other explanation for why Ms. Nelson would lie about something so important other than that she wanted to be famous for a few minutes?
No, I have no explanation for that.
I'm going to show you what I'm marking as Deposition Exhibit number 22. and I'll direct your attention to page 7 of this document. I'll represent to you that this is a copy of the testimony of Regina Meek at the trial of Damian Eccles and James Baldwin. Do you recall in your interview by the West Memphis Police Department that you told the West Memphis Police that you had searched the woods with Lieutenant Regina Meek from the West Memphis Police Department?
I don't recall that.
As you sit here today, do you recall whether you searched the wooded area with Lieutenant Regina Meek?
Miss Regina Meeks came out to the wooded area. We followed her over there. She got out her car. She walked down in the woods just a few minutes, and she come back. It was hot, muggy, full of mosquitoes, and that was her reason that she told us. And it was shift change.
If Ms. Meek testifies, as she did in deposition exhibit number 22, that she was out of her car for 3 to 4 minutes and did not cross the pipe bridge into the woods, would you disagree with that testimony?
No, I wouldn't disagree.
And would you consider, based on your recollection of events and your consideration of Lieutenant Meek's testimony that you have in front of you, would you consider that to be searching the woods with Lieutenant Meek, her getting out of the car for 3 or 4 minutes and walking to the pipe bridge?
No, because it was a 3-acre area.
Let me mark as deposition exhibit number 23 the testimony of Dana Moore. This is trial testimony. In your journals and in your Dimension Films interview, and I think in a few other places, you have indicated that you were with Dana Moore and Mark Byers between 6 p.m. and 6:30 on May 5th of 1993, and that the three of you guys were discussing where the kids were and starting a search and calling the police officers. Do you recall that you have previously made those statements?
I met Miss Moore in her front yard.
Do you recall that you, on numerous occasions, said that that meeting in the front yard with Ms. Moore and Mr. Byers occurred around 6 or 6:30 p.m. on May 5th of 1993?
I don't want to put a time on it, but we did have the meeting in the front yard.
Well, and I understand you're not putting a time on it today. My question is a little more specific. Do you recall that on past occasions you have said that that meeting in the front yard with Ms. Moore and Mr. Byers occurred around 6 or 6:30 p.m. on May 5th of 1993?
No, ma'am.
You just have no recollection of that as you sit here today?
Well, I don't know the time.
Let me direct your attention to the second page of the Dana Moore testimony. Beginning about halfway down the page, Mr. Fogelman asks Ms. Moore, "Later, did you see him," meaning her son Michael Moore, "with somebody else besides Steve Branch?" Answer, "Yes, sir, Chris Byers." Question, "Where did you see them at that time?" Answer, "Going north on 14th Street. Question, "Were they walking?" Or answer, "They were riding their bikes." Question, "How many bikes were there?" Answer, "There was 2 bikes." And then down towards the end, about 4 lines up, question, "What time of the day was it?" Answer, 6 o'clock. Did I read that correctly?
That's what, correct?
Ms. Moore testified that she saw the boys at 6 p.m. on May 5th of 1993. Does that refresh your recollection about whether or not the meeting you had in Ms. Moore's front yard with Mr. Byers and Ms. Moore discussing the missing boys could have occurred substantially later than 6 p.m.?
No, I don't.
Is it possible that on the occasions you stated that you met with Ms. Moore and Mr. Byers at 6 p.m. or 6:30, you were mistaken?
I'm not sure of the time. I know we had the meeting.
Is it possible that you were mistaken in past accounts by you of what happened on May 5th, 1993, when you say that meeting occurred at 6 p.m. or 6:30 p.m.?
I'm not sure about the time.
And I'll object to that answer as being non-responsive. My specific question is it possible, Mr. Hobbs, in past versions or past accounts of those events, that you were mistaken when you said you met with Ms. Moore and Mr. Byers at 6 p.m. or 6:30 on May 5th of 1993?
It's possible.
Is it possible that your meeting with Ms. Moore and Mr. Byers did not occur until approximately 8 or 8:30 p.m.?
I guess it's possible.
You don't have any reason to believe that Ms. Moore is lying in her deposition testimony, do you?
No.
Let me show you what I'm marking as deposition exhibit number 24, which is a declaration of John Mark Byers. I'll give you a moment to look at that. Let me direct your attention to paragraph 17. Mr. Byers states, "In fact, I met Hobbs at my house at approximately 8:20 or 8:30 p.m. I know it was 8:20 or 8:30 p.m. or so because, number one, Dana Moore had last seen the boys riding their bikes around 6 p.m., and two, I called the police to report Christopher missing around 8:08 p.m. Simply put, I did not and Dana Moore did not even think the boys were missing at 6 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. Did I read that entry correctly, Mr. Hobbs?
You did.
I'm sorry?
You did.
And does that additional testimony from Mr. Byers, in conjunction with what we've just read from Ms. Moore, suggest to you that the time that you met Ms. Moore and Ms. Byers in the front yard of her house on May 5th of 1993 was not around 6 or 6:30 p.m., but was rather around 8 or 8:30 p.m.?
Okay, sounds good.
Does that sound correct?
I don't know about correct.
Objection, lack of foundation, ask and answer. He said what he has to say about this at least 20 times.
Let me direct your attention to paragraph 26 in Mr. Byers' declaration. I think it's the last paragraph. I'm going to read it. On one occasion, I asked Hobbs, what if those three, the West Memphis three, didn't do it? What happened if it was an accident? Of course, it is preposterous to think that 3 8-year-old boys could be killed in the way they were and it was an accident. Hobbs responded, you are right. It could have been an accident, and that would be like a drunk driver. That person would not be a monster. And then Mr. Byers goes on and talks about his feelings about what you said. Is that a true and accurate account of a conversation you had with Mr. Byers?
No, I don't recall this one.
Is it possible that that conversation occurred?
No.
Are you accusing Mr. Byers of lying in paragraph 26 when he describes this conversation with you?
I'm saying I don't believe that statement.
I understand that. Mr. Byers has sworn that that conversation occurred, and I'm asking you if it's your position that Mr. Byers is lying in this declaration in paragraph 26.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you think of any explanation why Mr. Byers would lie about having that conversation with you?
No, you had to ask him.
Let me show you what I'm going to mark as deposition exhibit number 25, which is a declaration from Pam Hobbs, your ex-wife. Let me direct your attention to paragraph 40 in that declaration. On May 5th or 6th, 1993. Did I read that correctly?
You read it right.
Is Ms. Hobbs telling the truth in paragraph 63?
Well, I would have to say that we've seen a man on the street, and he was kind of a poor-looking man walking.
When Ms. Hobbs states that you never mentioned to her seeing a black man or a black bum on May 5th or May 6th of 1993, is she telling the truth?
She was with me when we saw him, and no, she's not telling the truth.
And I don't want to have any confusion over what I'm asking. I understand it's your testimony that Ms. Hobbs was with you when you saw this black bum. My question to you is it correct that you never discussed the black bum with Ms. Hobbs from May of 1993 to the present?
No, that's not true.
And is it your position that Ms. Hobbs is lying about the black bum in that paragraph?
She's misrepresented.
Can you think of any reason that Ms. Hobbs would misrepresent whether or not you two had discussed a black bum that was seen on May 5th or May 6th of 1993, the approximate date of the murders?
You had to ask her.
You can't think of any reason?
No.
Let me show you what I'm going to mark as deposition exhibit number 26, which is a declaration from Marie Hicks. Who is Ms. Hicks, Mr. Hobbs?
Pam's mother.
Stevie's grandmother?
Yes, ma'am.
Amanda's grandmother?
Yes, ma'am.
Is she a good grandmother?
She's their grandmother.
Is she a good grandmother?
I would hope so.
Do you have any personal knowledge of whether she's a good grandmother?
Yeah, I would say she would be one.
Let me direct your attention to paragraph 17 of Ms. Hicks' declaration. She states, "I was very close to Stevie, and he would frequently visit me or stay overnight at my house." Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
On one occasion, Stevie was over at my house visiting. He had been playing, and I went to look for him. I could not find him. Ultimately, I found Stevie hiding in one of my closets. When I asked him why he was in the closet, he told me he had gone to the bathroom, defecated his pants. Stevie told me that he was scared that Terry would hurt him for messing, quote, messing his pants, and told me that Terry always punished him severely when he had, quote, accidents. Stevie told me that Terry had locked Stevie in the closet as punishment for having such accidents. Did I read paragraph 17 correctly?
Yeah, you did.
Is it true that you would lock Stevie in the closet as punishment for having toiletry or bowel accidents?
No.
Can you think of any reason why Stevie would be hiding in one of the closets when he had an accident with regard to his bowels or a toiletry accident?
No.
Do you dispute that Ms. Hicks is telling the truth in paragraph 17?
Yes.
On what basis?
He was 8 years old. He didn't have bowel or bathroom problems.
And so it's your testimony that when Stevie was 7 or 8, he was not having any sort of toiletry, bowel, or urinary accidents.
Correct.
And so based on that alone, you dispute Ms. Hicks's testimony.
Most definitely.
Can you think of any reason that Ms. Hicks would make up the events reflected in paragraph 17 about the accidents and and Stevie telling her that you locked him in the closet?
You might need to ask her.
As you sit here today, can you think of any reason she would want to do that?
No.
Let me direct your attention to paragraph 18. It reads, "One time, Terry and his daughter, Amanda, were at my house." I think Ada's left out there, maybe. Out of nowhere, Amanda announced, "Daddy Terry sticks his finger up my butt." Terry jumped up and grabbed Amanda and took her to another room. When they came back, Amanda said that she had been lying, that her daddy had not stuck his finger in her rear end. I knew a 4-year-old would not just come up with that statement out of the blue if there had not been some sort of abuse. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah,
First, let me ask you if you recall this incident occurring.
it never happened.
As you sit here today under oath, it's your testimony that there was never a time that Amanda said that you had, quote, stuck your finger up her butt or anything like that.
Not to my knowledge. I never heard this one before.
And I take it then that it's your position that Ms. Hicks is lying in paragraph 18 when she discusses this issue.
Most definitely.
And can you think of any reason that Ms. Hicks would want to lie about something this serious as the events reflected in paragraph 18?
I don't know why.
Let me show you what I'm going to mark as deposition exhibit number 27, which is a declaration of Jo Lynn McCaughey. And who is Jo Lynn McCaughey?
Pam's sister.
Let me direct your attention to paragraph 16. And I'll let you take just a minute to read through that paragraph. I'll read the paragraph, and I'll begin with the second sentence. In 2003 or 2004, Terry asked me if I felt like he had murdered Stevie. I asked him why he was questioning me like that. He said he wanted to know. I told him that if he asked me, then I was going to tell him what I truly felt. I told him I believed he was involved in Stevie's murder either directly or indirectly. He told me that hurt his feelings. Let me stop there for a moment. Did that conversation occur?
No, ma'am.
Did you and Jo Lynn McCaughey ever have a discussion about whether you had been involved in Stevie's murder?
No.
Did you and Jo Lynn McCaughey ever have a conversation about whether Jo Lynn McCaughey thought you were in some way involved in Stevie's murder?
Not to my knowledge.
I'm going to continue reading. I told him I believed he was involved in Stevie's murder either directly or indirectly. He told me that hurt his feelings. Then we were talking about whether Christopher Byers had been mutilated, and Terry said the pathologist had said the cut was so precise that if it wasn't done by a surgeon, perhaps it was done by a jeweler. My husband is a jeweler, so I said that theory did not quite fit. I looked at him, and Terry then said something like, "You know, I've got experience from working in a slaughterhouse, don't you?" Did that exchange occur between you and Ms. McCaughey?
No, ma'am.
Do you, in fact, have experience working in a slaughterhouse?
Of course.
Why do you say of course?
My dad built a packing house back in the 70s.
What years were you working in the slaughterhouse?
In the early to mid-70s.
And what type of work did you do at the slaughterhouse?
We were butchers.
And I gather there were hogs that were butchered?
Yes.
And what other types of meat did you guys pack?
Beef and pork.
And were you actually involved in slaughtering the animals?
Sure.
On a daily basis?
Every day.
And have you ever had any discussions with anybody in Pam's Hobbs family in which you discussed your experience working in a slaughterhouse in conjunction with discussing the murders of Stevie, Michael, and Christopher?
No.
I take it then that it's your position that Ms. McCaughey is lying in paragraph 16.
Correct.
And as you sit here today, can you think of any reason that Ms. McCaughey would lie and make the statement she makes in paragraph 16?
I don't know.
Can't think of any reason.
No.
Let me direct your attention to paragraph 33. Terry has repeatedly sexually molested his daughter Amanda. Not long before Stevie's death, when Amanda was 4 years old, Amanda told me that Terry had put his finger into her booty. Have you heard that Amanda told JoLynn McCaughey, her aunt, that you put your finger in her booty?
No,
Do you believe that that is a lie?
of course.
And can you think of any reason that Ms. McCaughey would lie about that event?
I don't know why.
Have you ever had any conversations with your daughter, Amanda Hobbs, about whether or not when she was under the age of 15, she accused you of any sexual wrongdoing?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, as you sit here today, because I would think that would be a conversation that would stick out in your mind, wouldn't it? A conversation with your daughter about whether you had sexually molested her.
I've never sexually molested my daughter.
I understand that's your testimony. My question to you is a little bit different. Have you ever had any conversations with Amanda about whether she ever accused you of sexual wrongdoing prior to, let's say, the date she turned 15?
I'm not sure.
Just don't know one way or the
Just
other.
don't know.
It's entirely possible that you and Amanda have had discussions in which you talked about Amanda accusing you of sexual wrongdoing when she was under the age of 15, correct?
I don't know. I ain't never touched my daughter.
It's possible you guys have talked about it, correct?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Don't remember one way or the
Not
other?
that kind of. We don't talk about garbage. And this is, well, I don't know where you get this stuff from, but no, this didn't happen.
I understand at your position it didn't happen, but I just want to be real clear about this. As you
I don't
sit,
see how much more clear you can get than it did not happen.
I'm talking about a different topic though now. As you sit here today in 2009, Mr. Hobbs, you just can't remember whether you and Amanda have ever talked about the fact that she accused you of sexual wrongdoing while she was a minor.
I don't know.
Let me direct your attention to paragraph 35 of Ms. McCaughey's declaration. Throughout the years, Amanda has repeatedly accused Terry of sexual abuse. In approximately 2002, Amanda told me that Terry had grabbed her breasts. On one occasion, Amanda called me at 3 a.m. and asked me to come and get her in Paris, Tennessee, and take her away from Terry. She refused to go back home to Terry. Let me ask you first, did you ever grab, in 2002, your daughter Amanda's breasts?
No, I have not.
Do you have any recollection of Amanda accusing you in 2002 of grabbing her breasts?
No, and I've never been to Paris, Tennessee.
And do you have any recollection of Amanda calling JoLynn McCaughey at any point and asking her to come get her and take her away from you?
No.
Let me direct your attention to paragraph 37. Let me back up for a second. I gather then that you believe that everything contained in paragraph 35 is a lie.
Most definitely.
Let me direct your attention to paragraph 37. Ms. McCaughey states, later, when Amanda was older, she again told me that Terry had sexually abused her and that he was physically abusive to her when she was pregnant. She said that Terry slammed her into a sink, causing the loss of a pregnancy. Let's break that down. Have you ever been physically abusive to Amanda?
No.
Were you ever physically abusive to Amanda when she was pregnant?
No.
Have you ever slammed Amanda into a sink?
No.
Did Amanda ever lose a pregnancy?
No.
Did Amanda ever go to the hospital as a result of trauma while she was pregnant?
No.
Have you ever had any conversations with Amanda about you being physically abusive?
No.
So I take it that it's your testimony that Ms. McCaughey is lying in paragraph 37.
Most definitely.
Let me turn your attention to paragraph 42. Terry physically abused Stevie when they were alone. Terry had a bad relationship with Stevie. He would punish Stevie by hitting him with a belt until he drew blood. Terry would also punish Stevie by locking him in a closet. Are any of those statements true, Mr. Hobbs?
No, ma'am, they are not.
Are all of those statements lies by Ms. McCaughey?
Most definitely.
Let me direct your attention to the last paragraph of Ms. McCaughey's declaration. Terry has promised Pam, that if he wins this case, he will pay her $50,000 immediately. He has told her that he plans to make $250 million from winning this case. Have you promised Pam Hobbs that if you win the case, you'll pay her $50,000?
No, ma'am.
Have you promised Pam that if you win the case, you will donate $50,000 to the charity that she'd like to set up?
No, ma'am.
Have you told Pam that if you win this case, you will pay her any money?
No.
Have you told Pam if you win this case, you will donate any amount of your winnings to her charity?
No.
And have you ever told Pam that you plan to make $250 million off this case?
No.
Have you ever told anybody that you plan to make $250 million off this
No.
case? Have you ever told anybody what you expect to make off this case?
I ain't asked. Well, I ain't gonna expect nothing.
I'm sorry?
I didn't expect nothing.
So it's your testimony, and you mentioned this earlier in your first deposition. Are you abandoning your claim for monetary damages in this case? This case, you don't want any money?
No, I think we requested a jury trial.
You requested a jury trial and you requested monetary dollar damages. Do you still want dollar damages from the jury?
I don't recall that dollar damages.
As you sit here today, putting everything else aside, are you going to ask the jury to pay you money or not?
I'm just gonna let it all fall in the hands of the jury.
But the jury's only going to give you things that you asked for. So my
Objection.
question to you
Calls
here
for a
is,
legal conclusion.
are you going to ask for money in this case, or is
Well-
this just about bringing the case?
We'll deal with that when we get to it.
It's true, Mr. Hobbs, that you are going to ask that the jury order Natalie Pasdar and the Dixie Chicks to pay you money, correct?
We'll deal with that when we get there.
It's entirely possible, isn't it?
Is it?
Well, it's what you alleged and
Objection
asked for
calls
in your
a legal
complaint.
conclusion.
You've already asked for money from Ms. Pasdar and from the Dixie Chicks. My question to you is, you intend to ask for money from Ms. Pasdar and the Dixie Chicks at a trial of this matter. This is not just about getting a finding from the jury that doesn't involve money, correct?
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
You just don't know as you sit here today whether you're going to ask for money. Is that your testimony?
Objection, it goes to the legal strategy. He doesn't know what we're going to do at the trial.
That's my question to him.
We'll deal with that at the trial.
Do you have any idea as you sit here today whether you're going to ask for money from Ms. Hobbs?
We'll wait and see when we get there.
The answer to that question is no, you just don't know.
Okay?
Is that the truth?
Sounds good.
My question is that the truth?
Objection, ask and
Yes or
answer
no?
15 times.
Is that correct?
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Let me show you what I'm marking as deposition exhibit number 28, which is a different declaration from Ms. Hobbs. And I'll direct your attention first to paragraph 7, which states, during our marriage, Terry was a regular user of drugs. He frequently smoked marijuana in our home and out of the house. He also used crystal methamphetamine and cocaine. Is it true that you were a regular user of drugs?
No.
Is it true that you smoked marijuana in the home?
We did sometimes.
And you say we, I'm just asking about you.
Me and Pam.
You, in fact, did smoke marijuana in the home with an 8-year-old
No.
son and a 4-year-old daughter?
No.
You smoked marijuana in the home after Stevie died?
Probably.
How frequently?
I'm not sure.
Once a week, twice a week?
I'm not sure.
Just can't give me any sort of ballpark of how frequently.
Right.
Too many times to remember.
Or not enough.
You tell me, was it more than 50 times?
Couldn't tell you.
More than 100?
Couldn't answer.
More than 500?
Couldn't tell you. Don't count them.
How many times did you use crystal meth in the home?
Long enough to see it wasn't for me.
How long did that take?
Not long.
Several months?
No.
Weeks?
Or less.
What about cocaine? How many times did you use cocaine in the house?
Not enough to count.
So essentially, the statements that Ms. Hobbs makes in paragraph 7 are correct.
To some degree. I'm not a user of drugs.
Let me direct your attention to paragraph 8. Paragraph 8 refers to the evening that you hit Ms. Hobbs and shot her brother. Let me read it. Terry was violent and he hit me twice. In 1999, Terry got into an argument. I insinuated that Terry had a girlfriend. As I attempted to leave the house to get away from Terry and just drive around to cool off, Terry fought me for the car keys. When he couldn't get the keys, Terry hit me in the face with a closed fist. I was truly hurt and was worried that he had broken my jaw because he had hit me so hard. I called my family and I talked to my brother, Kevin Hicks. I asked him what a broken jaw felt like. My brother and parents immediately came to check on me. I told Terry my family was coming to take care of me, and I believed that Terry would leave the house. Instead, Terry waited outside for them, sitting on the tailgate of the truck. Is paragraph 8 a true statement?
No.
What's not true about it?
I'm not violent. Never have been.
Let me just stop you for a second, because let's be clear about that. It is your testimony that you are not a violent man.
Correct.
You are not an angry man.
Angry over things that has happened in the past 2 years. Yes.
Fair enough. You are not angry in the sense that you become physically abusive.
Correct.
And you do not fly into rages.
Correct.
And you do not beat your children.
Never.
What else is wrong with paragraph 8 other than that you are not a violent man?
I didn't have a girlfriend. I was a married man.
Have you ever cheated on any of your wives?
No.
You hesitated?
So?
Or were you thinking of an event?
No.
How many times have you been married?
Twice.
Are you seeing anyone now?
No.
You hesitated on that too?
And?
I'm wondering if you're thinking about
No.
somebody that might be an answer to that question.
No.
Okay, what else is wrong with paragraph 8?
I ain't hit Pam with what it says here with a fist. I never have hit my wife with a fist.
Well, you testified before that you backhanded her. So the debate is whether it was...
Hand, backhand.
Okay. Like, show me how. Well, harder than that, right?
Right.
It was a hard hit, hard backhand.
It was a slap backhand.
And what else is wrong with paragraph 8?
I didn't break her jaw.
I don't think she said you broke her jaw. She said it felt like a broken jaw. What else?
And I didn't sit outside and wait on them.
Anything else?
And number 8, I don't know.
Anything else on number 8 that as you read it through it, you think it is false?
A whole bunch, most of it, yeah.
Well, you've listed for me the things that you think are false. Is there anything else other than what you've listed?
Well, let me reread it.
Sure.
And it didn't happen in 1999,
What year was it?
94.
Anything else you can see that's incorrect or false about paragraph 8 of the Pam Hobbs deposition that is marked as Deposition Exhibit 28?
Well, she talked to one brother, her stepbrother, and her brother come down with her parents.
She talked to Kevin Hicks, but Jackie Hicks came down with the parents.
Correct.
Okay, anything else?
Nah, it looks pretty good. Okay.
Mr. Hobbs, why didn't you leave after you found out that Pam's family was coming down to check on her after you had hit her?
First of all, I didn't hit her.
Backhanded her.
Second of all, it was my home. I don't have to leave.
But you understood that Pam's father and her mother and her brother would be angry with you for laying a hand on her at all, whether it was a closed fist or a backhand, right?
Okay. What, did it say in here she hit me too?
Well, let me... You understood that her father, her mother, and her brother would be angry with you for laying a hand on her, whether it was a closed fist or a backhand, and whether or not Pam had touched you, correct?
Correct.
That's just the nature of family, right?
Does it say in here I called the police as soon as she told me that they was coming down? No, it don't.
Fair enough. I'll get to that in just a second. But before you call the police, after Pam tells you the family is coming, and you know they're going to be mad, doesn't it make sense to just leave and let the situation cool off?
No, I didn't do nothing.
You had just slapped your wife.
Well, she had been provoking me for 3 days over one simple woman.
She was asking for it?
Well, you might ask her.
You might say that, right?
Well, you don't provoke somebody for 3 days over something that's not there.
It's your testimony that because Pam was kept bringing up her belief that you had a girlfriend over the course of 3 days, it was appropriate for you to backhand her. Is that your testimony, sir?
Objection to the term appropriate.
No.
Wouldn't it have been prudent, let's put it that way, for you to leave the premises, even though it was your house, when you found out that Pam's family was coming to check on her after you had backhanded her?
No.
Why not?
It's just as prudent for them to stay home and mind their own business.
Your position is that after you backhanded your wife, it would have been more prudent for her family to stay home, not come check on her, and, quote, mind her own business, than it would have been for you to leave the house for a couple of hours and let them check on her without you there provoking the situation. Is that correct?
I wasn't there provoking nothing.
You
I
had
lived there. That's my home.
You had a gun in your pants, didn't you?
I did.
And you don't consider going out to meet her family after you had backhanded her with a gun in your pants provocation?
I didn't go out to meet her family, and they never knew I had a gun in my hand.
Where were you exactly? They didn't know. Jackie Hicks and his dad and his mother did not know you had a gun in your pants when you were talking to them, did they?
I didn't talk to them. They come out to talk to me.
And where did the shooting occur?
Outside of my home.
You were in fact outside, correct?
Correct.
You met them outside when they came to check on Pam, correct?
No.
How did you get outside to shoot Jackie Hicks?
I had a front door and I had a back door.
And?
They come in the front and I went out the back.
They came in the front door, you went out the back.
Correct.
And how did you shoot Jackie in the front yard?
Well, they came in the front and I went out my garage and stood out there by my truck and called the police the second time.
And where did the shooting occur?
Out there by my truck.
In the backyard?
In my driveway.
In the front?
Correct.
So how did the shooting occur in the front if you had gone out in the back?
I went out my garage, I called it my back.
Gotcha. So your garage was in the front of the house?
Correct.
Let me direct your attention to paragraph 9. As they were fighting, Terry pulled out a gun and shot Jackie in the abdomen. He was moving to again shoot Jackie, and my father started walking toward Terry. At that point, Terry pointed the gun at my dad and said, quote, "You'd better not go any farther. I'll shoot you too, you fat motherfucker." Did I read that correctly?
You read it correctly.
Did you say that? Is that how that transpired?
No. No.
Is Pam lying in paragraph 9?
This is not a true statement.
Is Pam lying?
Evidently.
And the last portion of paragraph 9 states that there was ultimately a surgery to remove that bullet, and her brother died as a result of complications from that surgery. Are you aware of that?
No, her brother died of crack cocaine.
Do you have any guilt feelings about shooting her brother?
I wish it never happened.
Do you have guilt feelings?
Not guilt,
Do you have any remorse over shooting him?
sure.
Why?
Because I liked him. I'd been in the family for years.
And so you wish you wouldn't have shot him?
I didn't shoot him.
You shot him.
I did not.
The gun just accidentally went off?
To shoot someone, you have to point the gun at them to shoot them, correct?
Yes.
I didn't point the gun at Jackie. This was an accident.
Let's take a small break so we can change the videotape.
This is the end of tape 1 of the videotape deposition of Mr. Terry Hobbs. Time is approximately 10:06 a.m.